Sparkling water, please, I asked softly, my tongue heavy with fatigue from the week's meetings. The man in the seat across the aisle tilted his head. "What was that?" He smirked, his voice dripping amusement. "Sparkling water," I repeated slower. He leaned back, loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear. "Say that again. Sparkling water. Try it properly." God, I love these flights. Free comedy. A few chuckles broke out, thin, nervous. Someone whispered, "Just ignore him." The air felt heavier than the cabin's recycled oxygen. I clenched the armrest. Their silence stung deeper than his voice. The flight attendant stood frozen, tray trembling in her hands. I caught her eyes. She lowered them quickly. The man leaned closer, lips pursed in mockery. "Sparklin', water, sound familiar now?" A young woman across from me shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe you should," she began. "Maybe he should learn proper English before buying business-class tickets." He cut her off, voice sharp, eyes on me. Heat spread through my chest. Every word he spat was a blade, and yet the silence around me was the sharper weapon. I whispered, though my voice carried farther than I expected. "My accent built empires yours could never imagine." The laughter died instantly. Even he blinked, caught off guard for a flicker. But he recovered quickly, chuckling low. "Cute line. Rehearsed, was it?" "No," I murmured, my jaw tight. "Lived." The woman who had tried to intervene looked down at her phone. A man behind me coughed, then muttered, "Not worth it." I turned my face toward the window, my reflection staring back at me with tired, wounded eyes. Their silence was my wound. His words were the salt. The attendant finally placed the water in front of me, her hands shaking. She whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't look at her. Sorry means nothing while silence still screams. The man chuckled again, leaning back smugly. "See, he can speak. Just needed practice." My hands trembled, but I kept my voice steady. "You confuse cruelty for wit. One day the world won't laugh with you, it will laugh at you." A few passengers exchanged looks, uneasy now, but none spoke up. "Not yet." I swallowed hard, tasting bitterness. The seatbelt pressed into my lap like a restraint, reminding me I was captive here. In the dim hum of the cabin, my thoughts echoed louder than their silence. That was the night I decided. Their comfort ends where my dignity begins. The wheels hit the runway with a jolt, but my chest had already crashed long before. I walked down the narrow aisle, dragging the weight of silence behind me. At the gate, voices circled in low tones. That was uncomfortable. Shouldn't have gone that far. Still, he was only joking. Each word brushed my ears like gnats, annoying, small, but relentless. None of those voices had risen when I needed them most. A man adjusted his tie as he walked beside me. "Hey, don't take it personal. Some people just talk rough." I stopped, turning just enough for him to see my jaw tighten. Silence was rougher. He blinked, muttered something like, all right, and melted into the crowd. I felt the sting crawl higher in my throat. It wasn't the insult that left the scar, it was the chorus of closed mouths. Near baggage claim, a hesitant voice brushed against me. "Excuse me." The young attendant from the flight stood there, uniform stiff, hands twisting nervously. Her eyes darted to the floor. I wanted to help earlier," she stammered, her voice trembling. "But the cabin rules, you know? We're told to avoid—" I cut her off, my voice low but sharp. "But fear was easier than my dignity." Her lips parted, then closed again. A swallow. Her gaze clung to the linoleum as if answers were etched in its dull shine. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally, almost inaudible beneath the carousel's grinding belts. I looked at her hands. They shook as if carrying a weight she never chose. Still, apologies weighed less than silence. "Sorry," I muttered, more to myself than to her. "Means nothing at baggage claim." Behind us, the same man from earlier who'd chuckled on the plane brushed past, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't look at me, but his words stabbed anyway. "Some folks are too sensitive, man. Just an accent, that's all." My fists clenched. The carousel groaned, spitting out black suitcases like empty promises. I thought of my father's voice, deep and unwavering, once telling me in our small kitchen, "Your accent is proof of roots. Never trim it for their comfort." That memory swelled in me now like armor, though my chest still ached with the fresh cut. The attendant tried again, her voice shaking. "You don't deserve that. I should have said something." "You should have," I replied flatly, then added softer, "But you didn't." Her cheeks flushed. I was scared. I finally turned to face her fully. My reflection in her glassy eyes showed not just exhaustion, but resolve forming like cracks hardening into stone. So was I. Difference is, I carried it. She flinched, words tumbling into silence. Around us, passengers collected their bags. One woman brushed my shoulder as she passed, murmuring, "He was wrong." She didn't stop walking. I exhaled, bitter air leaving my lungs. Whispers, apologies, sidelong glances, all fragments of a wound they didn't have to bear. The attendant opened her mouth again, but I shook my head, cutting off words I didn't need. "Keep your apology. Carry your silence. I carried enough for both of us." Her lips trembled, then she turned away. My suitcase thudded onto the carousel. I grabbed it with more force than necessary, the handle digging into my palm. The pain felt cleaner than their excuses. As I walked toward the sliding glass doors, a wave of cool air struck my face. But no air could cool the fire crackling inside me. Every step echoed with one thought. Silence is the loudest betrayal, and yet in that echo, something stirred. A seed of defiance pressing against the soil of my grief, demanding light. I paused before stepping outside, tightening my grip on the handle. The night swallowed the terminal's hum, and I whispered to myself, "This won't end here." The office doors closed behind me with a soft hiss, but the echo of that flight hadn't left my ears. I walked into the boardroom, every pair of eyes already weighing me down. "Rough trip?" one colleague asked, lips curling into something that looked like sympathy but felt like mockery. "Depends what you call rough," I muttered, dropping my folder onto the polished table. Another voice piped up, casual and dismissive. "Saw something online. Some disagreement on your flight?" "Disagreement?" My chest tightened. "That's what you call it?" The PR officer leaned forward, her voice syrupy. "It's already circulating. A few blogs picked it up. We just need to manage the narrative." I let out a bitter laugh. "Manage the narrative?" Not the wound, not the silence that fed it. The board chair cleared his throat. "This might affect investor confidence," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "Investors should fear silence, not truth." A hush fell. Eyes darted toward each other. Someone shifted papers as if hiding behind them. One man whispered almost kindly, "Maybe don't let it get to you. People say things all the time. Thick skin helps." Thick skin. I leaned forward, my fists pressing into the wood. My skin has carried centuries of weight. It's not thickness I lack, it's patience. Murmurs spread like ripples. Some nodded faintly, others avoided my gaze. The PR officer sighed, pinching her nose. "We could spin this. Portray you as dignified, above it all. Investors love resilient stories." Her words clawed at me. "Resilience," I repeated bitterly. "Code for endure quietly." A man at the far end of the table muttered, "Better than anger stories." I turned toward him, my voice calm but cutting. "Better for who? For them? For you?" He avoided my eyes, staring instead at his untouched coffee. The chair finally spoke again, measured and detached. "Look, we understand it was unpleasant, but stirring this up further may damage the company's brand. Sometimes silence protects." I shook my head slowly, every word like stone-breaking glass. Silence doesn't protect, it poisons. And it already did. The room fell into uneasy quiet. I could hear my heartbeat louder than their breaths. A woman across from me, her voice almost trembling, whispered, "You don't have to fight this alone." "But you also don't have to ignite it." Her hesitation was its own betrayal. "Ignite?" I muttered. "The fire was lit on that plane. I only carry its smoke." The board chair leaned back, eyes narrowing. "We'll reconvene tomorrow. Think carefully before deciding how to proceed." I gathered my papers with shaking hands. The weight of their stares followed me out, each gaze a reminder that even in my own company, I was both leader and outsider. As I pushed open the door, the PR officer called after me softly, "We'll draft a statement. Just something safe." I didn't look back. Safe for them. Dangerous for me. The hallway stretched ahead, long and cold. My reflection in the glass wall stared back. Not broken, but burning. And in that burning, I felt the truth carve itself deeper. Silence was not my shield. It was their weapon. I walked on, every step heavy with one thought. The fallout had only begun. My phone buzzed nonstop the next morning. Links, screenshots, half-written apologies from strangers who didn't owe me anything. I tapped one headline and his face filled my screen, the same smirk I'd seen on the plane. It was just a joke. He chuckled into the reporter's microphone, his shoulders loose with arrogance. People get too sensitive these days. I wasn't mocking, I was lightening the mood. My stomach twisted. The reporter laughed politely, feeding his act. Another clip auto-played. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Look, I fly business all the time. Folks come in with heavy accents, sometimes you can't understand a word. I just have fun with it. No harm meant. He should have laughed along. My fist tightened around the phone. No harm meant. Yet the harm pulsed through me even now. The voice of my father echoed in memory. They'll always disguise cruelty as humor. Don't let them decide the meaning of your pain. The door opened, and my friend Marcus stepped in, tossing his jacket over the chair. His eyes searched mine. "You've seen it, haven't you?" I held up the phone without speaking. He sighed, sinking into the chair opposite me. "He's on 3 channels already. Twitter's eating it up. Half defend him, half tear him apart. You're trending, but not in the way you want." "He painted me as a joke," I muttered, my throat burning. Marcus leaned forward, voice sharp. "And if you stay silent, they win twice." I lifted my eyes slowly. "Twice?" "First on that plane," he whispered, when they all looked away. "And now, if you let his voice be the only one carried." I swallowed hard. Silence had already betrayed me once. Could I afford to let it choke me again? Marcus continued, his tone softer now. "You've built everything on dignity, on restraint. But dignity doesn't mean silence. You need to speak. Publicly." The thought weighed on me like lead. And what then? "They'll call me bitter, angry, unprofessional." "They already call you that," Marcus snapped, then caught himself, lowering his voice. "They already weaponized your accent. Don't give them your silence, too." I set the phone down, its glass screen reflecting my face, tired, furious, yet unbroken. The interview played again in the background, his laugh scratching at my ears. "He should have laughed along," he repeated smugly. I whispered to myself, more vowed than thought. "I will never laugh at my own humiliation." Marcus heard and nodded. "Then fight. Not with fists, not with rage, with your voice. The same one he tried to make a parody of." The words struck deep. My voice, the one my father once said carried generations, was the only weapon they couldn't strip from me. I closed my eyes briefly, inhaling through the sting. His arrogance filled the airwaves, but my silence had already lasted too long. When I opened them again, Marcus was watching, waiting. I clenched my hand into a fist and breathed out steady. "Then I'll speak. But not just for me, for every silence they've ever fed on." He leaned back, a small, grim smile tugging at his mouth. "That's the you I know." The phone buzzed again with another headline. I didn't flinch. The battle had shifted. His defense had lit a fire, but my voice, my accent, my truth would be the blaze that answered, and I knew, as Marcus's words still echoed, "If you stay silent, they win twice," that the war for dignity had only just begun. The chandeliers glittered above me, but all I felt was the heat crawling under my collar. The gala was supposed to be a performance of grace, of civility, but I'd long learned those words were often masks. "Didn't expect to see you here," a voice rang out, sharp and far too familiar. My chest tightened. I turned, and there he was, the passenger. His smirk carved through the room like a knife through silk. "You follow me everywhere now?" I muttered, forcing my voice low. He chuckled, loud enough for the nearest tables to turn. No, I just go where I'm welcome. Funny seeing you here, though. Must have mistaken the guest list. A ripple of laughter, hesitant, polite, complicit, spread around us. My fists itched, but I held them still against the glass of champagne in my hand. You still think it's a joke? I whispered. Of course it was, he snapped back, raising his voice. Everyone knew it. Except you, apparently. Sensitive types always ruin the mood. A man beside him murmured. Perhaps not the place. Why not? He barked. We're all friends here. We should speak plainly. I'm tired of walking on eggshells just because someone has an accent thicker than the soup they serve here. The words hit me harder than the flight. Louder now, in front of polished elites who had the power to shape markets. And silence. My breath came sharp, but my voice steadied. Every word you spit exposes you, not me. The crowd shifted. Murmurs bubbled. Some turned their heads, others leaned in closer, waiting for the duel to bleed. He sneered. Exposes me, please. You think because you've got a title, a suit, that you're one of us? No, you'll always be the man with the accent, always the outsider. The old wound cracked wider in me, but I didn't flinch. My chest rose, slow and steady. You mistake loudness for power. Your voice is loud. Mine is lasting. Gasps fluttered through the air like moths to flame. He laughed, brittle now, glancing around for allies. Oh, come on, don't tell me you're buying this performance. A woman whispered near him. That's enough, but he pressed on, desperate. This is what they do. They play the victim, milk the room, guilt us into silence. I stepped closer, my words deliberate, slicing. Silence is what built you. Silence protected you. Tonight, silence dies. For a moment, nothing. Just the clink of glass somewhere at the back. Then murmurs again, this time lower, heavier. I saw faces tilt, not toward him, but away. Away from the stench of his cruelty now laid bare. He swallowed hard, his smirk faltering. His voice cracked as he muttered, You think you can turn them against me? I whispered, my lips near his ear, though the whole room strained to catch it. No, you did that yourself. The crowd parted, eyes darting, judgments forming in silence sharper than applause. I turned from him, my heartbeat thundering, but my steps steady. Behind me, his voice rose, desperate. This isn't over! I didn't look back. No, I muttered, but it's breaking. The chandeliers still glittered, but now they felt less like decoration, more like spotlights, exposing everything he tried to bury. And in that moment, walking away from his trembling voice, I knew the shift had begun. The email subject read, Captain H. Reynolds requests a meeting. My chest tightened before I even clicked it. When I arrived at the quiet cafe he'd chosen, he was already seated, staring into his untouched coffee. His hands trembled slightly as I approached. Thank you for coming, he murmured, rising halfway, then sitting back down awkwardly. I kept my voice flat. You were the pilot. He nodded, his throat bobbing. I heard everything. Every word. The bitterness rose in me like bile. And you stayed silent. His eyes flickered, shame written in the way he couldn't meet mine. Protocol, he whispered. Captains are trained not to intervene unless safety is at risk. Safety? I snapped, my fist pressing against the table. What do you call dignity? A luxury? His jaw tightened, his voice breaking. No, a duty. One I failed. The silence between us burned hotter than his confession. I leaned back, my breath sharp. You let him mock me while the cabin laughed. You let silence do the rest. I know, he muttered, his hands gripping the cup so hard his knuckles whitened. And I've lived with it since that night. I narrowed my eyes. Why reach out now? He exhaled heavily, shoulders sagging. Because I filed a report after the flight. I broke protocol. I couldn't carry it. I named him, documented what he said, and I'm willing to testify. Publicly. The words cut through me like a sudden gust of wind. Unexpected. Bracing. You'd stand against him? I asked cautiously. He looked up, his eyes finally steady. A captain's duty is to protect every soul on board, including dignity. I forgot that once. I won't again. My chest ached, torn between relief and rage. Do you know what silence did to me? It buried me alive, his voice cracked, almost a plea. Let me help dig you out. I stared at him, the weight of his offer pressing on me. A flash of memory clawed at me. My father's voice reminding me, allies appear late, but late is better than never. I clenched my jaw, whispering bitterly, you should have spoken then. I didn't, he admitted, his voice trembling. But I will now. I'll stand in any room, under oath, under lights, and I'll say it. He mocked you, he demeaned you, and we all failed you. The heaviness in my chest shifted. Not gone, but moved. Like a stone finally nudged after sitting too long. I muttered, almost to myself. His voice was loud. Yours might carry farther. The captain leaned in, eyes fierce now. Not just mine, ours. If you let me stand beside you. For the first time since that flight, I felt the edge of silence crack. I took a long breath, meeting his gaze. Then don't fail me again. His reply came quick, firm. I won't. The hum of the cafe filled the space between us, but something louder rose inside me, the shift of power. His testimony wasn't just words, it was a weapon. As I rose to leave, his voice followed me, low but steady. You're not alone in this fight anymore. I stepped outside, the air biting cool against my skin. For weeks I had carried only silence and mockery. Now I carried his vow, and I knew it would cut deeper than the laughter ever had. The cameras hummed, the lights burned, and the air thickened with expectation. The shareholders' meeting had never been more crowded, never so heavy with silence waiting to break. The moderator cleared his throat. We're here to address the incident. My chest tightened as I leaned into the microphone. Incident? I murmured, letting the word taste bitter in my mouth. Across the stage, he sat, my antagonist, polished, rehearsed, but his eyes twitching. He laughed into his mic too loud. I've said this already, it was just words, a joke. Nothing more! Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt my fists curl, but I kept my voice steady, low. Words? He smirked. Yes, harmless words. He's the one turning them into drama. The pilot shifted in his chair beside me, his uniform stiff with dignity. His voice broke the silence. I heard those words. They weren't harmless. They demeaned. They degraded. They endangered dignity, and that endangers trust on any aircraft. The room stirred. Papers shuffled. Cameras zoomed in. The antagonist's voice cracked slightly. You're exaggerating. It wasn't dangerous. I leaned forward, my voice cutting clean. You mocked my accent, but it carried truth across oceans. What has your voice built? A murmur rose like a tide hitting shore. Some shareholders nodded faintly. His smirk faltered. It was just words, words, I snapped, my palms pressing the table, topple empires and raise nations. Words enslaved, words freed. Words break bones without leaving bruises. And your words exposed you. The room fell into heavy silence. His mouth opened, closed. He searched for allies in the crowd, but eyes were shifting away from him, one by one. The moderator whispered, Please, let's remain civil. Civil? I cut in, my voice shaking with restrained fury. He dragged civility through the mud when he reduced me to an accent for sport. Civil is not silence in the face of cruelty. Civil is standing against it. The pilot nodded firmly beside me. A captain protects all on board, including dignity. I failed then. I will not fail now, the antagonist snapped, desperation cracking through. You're all making me into a villain. Over a joke. He should have laughed. I rose, my voice steady, resonant. I will never laugh at my own humiliation, and I will never let you define it as comedy. Gasps. A few claps, hesitant but real, broke the silence before being quickly stifled. The shareholders shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tide turn. The antagonist stammered, voice breaking. You're twisting this. No, I whispered into the microphone, my eyes locked on his. I'm revealing it. His face flushed crimson. His hand shook as he reached for his glass of water, spilling a thin line across the table. The room saw it. The collapse had begun. I stepped back, my breath ragged but steady, and let the silence weigh heavy. Not the silence of betrayal this time, but the silence of truth, landing where it could no longer be denied. The meeting adjourned in chaos, but I walked out steady, each step echoing louder than his trembling voice, and I knew as I crossed that stage the court of conscience had passed its first verdict. The hearing room buzzed with 100 murmurs until the chair's gavel cut it down to silence. My pulse thrummed, but I stood still, letting the weight of the moment press into me. He sat across from me, the man who once laughed so easily, now pale, shifting in his seat. His voice cracked as he leaned into the microphone. I didn't mean harm. It was just a joke. The shareholders no longer nodded. Reporters no longer chuckled. Even his old allies stared at the floor. The pilot's voice rose, steady and calm. I heard him. I saw the room. It wasn't a joke. It was cruelty. And silence let it live. A low rumble of agreement filled the chamber. I watched the smirk that once mocked me collapse into a trembling mouth searching for words. His eyes darted toward me, lips parting. No sound came, just the faintest whisper. Sorry. My hands clenched at my sides. Too late, too empty. That single word carried no weight, no sacrifice, no courage. I leaned toward my own microphone, my voice slow, measured, sharp. You mocked my accent. You turned my voice into a weapon against me. But now your silence mocks you, gasps broke out. The chair called for order, but the shift had already happened. His shoulders sagged. Reporters scribbled furiously. One man muttered behind me, "He's finished." I turned away from him, my chest heavy with something more complicated than victory. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was exhaustion, decades of silence catching up with me in one breath. As we filed out, the pilot touched my arm gently. It's done. I met his eyes, shaking my head slightly. No, it's begun. Outside, the cameras flashed. Voices shouted questions, but I barely heard them. My reflection in the glass doors caught my eye. Tired, scarred, but standing. Still standing, I whispered to myself, letting the words carry the final weight. Their comfort ended. My dignity did not. And for the first time since that flight, the silence around me felt like peace, not betrayal. The lecture hall hummed with the soft rustle of notebooks and the nervous coughs of students. I stood at the podium, palms resting on the cool wood, and for a moment, I simply listened to the silence. Not the silence that betrayed me, but the silence that waited. I began softly. You've heard pieces of my story in headlines, maybe in whispers. Tonight, I want you to hear it from me. Not filtered, not mocked, not twisted. A hand rose timidly in the front row. Why speak here? Why not just move on? I swallowed, my voice thick. Because moving on without speaking is just silence in disguise. And silence is what almost buried me. Gasps stirred, the room leaning closer. Another student asked, her voice shaky. What hurt most? His words? I paused, letting the ache surface. No, not his words. The laughter, the silence, the eyes that turned away when dignity was cut open in front of them. That betrayal carved deeper than his insult ever could. The hall quieted again, heavy with truth. I straightened, my voice firm now. But here's what I learned. Never let their ears define your worth. Never let their silence shrink your voice. Whispers rippled, but this time they carried awe, not complicity. A young man stood, his voice trembling. How did you keep speaking after all that? I clenched the podium, remembering the flight, the boardroom, the collapse. Because if I didn't, they'd win twice. First by mocking me, second by silencing me. And I refused to give cruelty that victory. Hands clapped hesitantly, then louder, until the room filled with applause. Afterward, as students gathered, one young woman stepped close, eyes shining. Your voice, she murmured, sounds like strength. Her words struck deeper than any headline, any courtroom victory. My throat tightened. I whispered back, it sounds like me. As I walked out into the cool night air, I carried that truth with me. My accent had been mocked, twisted, turned into a weapon. But now it had become something else, an anthem. And in that anthem, I found my closure. Their comfort had ended, but my dignity had not.